VfL Wolfsburg spent 29 successive seasons in the Bundesliga. In May, they lost a playoff to Paderborn. They are now in the 2 Bundesliga, and they have spent more this summer than the rest of the division put together. Schalke won this division by 8 points and scored 50 goals. 9 clubs scored more. They won it at the other end. 31 conceded, 8 fewer than anyone else in a league that averaged 2.93 goals a game. Schalke have been promoted. The blueprint went up with them, and the money came down from the opposite direction. Here is how it finished. Schalke on 70 points. Elversberg and Paderborn both on 62. All 3 are in the Bundesliga now. Hanover were 4th on 60. Then 2 clubs arrived at the same 52 points by opposite routes. Darmstadt drew 13 games, more than anyone in the division, and finished 5th. Kaiserslautern won 16 and lost 14, with only 4 draws, and finished 6th. Same points, completely different seasons. Both are still here. Elversberg scored 64, the most in the division, and went up. Of the clubs still here, Hanover scored the most with 60, then Darmstadt on 57, Dresden 54, Karlsruhe and Bielefeld both on 53. Look where those last 2 finished. Bielefeld scored 53 and came 13th. Dresden scored 54 and came 11th. In this division, an attack on its own moves you almost nowhere. The other end is where next season gets decided. Schalke conceded 31 and left. Behind them, it gets ugly quickly. Fürth conceded 68, the most in the division, and they are still here. Karlsruhe conceded 64 and finished 10th. Magdeburg conceded 58 and lost 19 games. The best defence among the clubs staying belongs to Hanover and Hertha, on 44 each. That is 13 goals worse than the champions managed. Now, the players, and only the ones still in this division. The dashed line is where goals match expected goals. Mateusz Żukowski scored 17 for Magdeburg from 13.27 expected in 1847 minutes. Phil Harris of Kiel scored 10 from 5.04, the largest overperformance here. Below the line, Fabian Rees generated 12.08 and scored 10. Alexander Bernhardsson scored 2 from 3.21. Rees has just moved to Wolfsburg, so that shortfall is now Wolfsburg's, and Wolfsburg paid for it. Creation splits the same way. Barish Attic of Magdeburg made 100 key passes, more than anyone in the division, and 11 assists. Marvin Wanitzek made 76 key passes and scored 15 goals in the same season, at 33 years old. Fabian Rees led the division with 13 assists. 2 of those 3 are still here. The third changed clubs without leaving the league, and that is the whole story of this window. Now the transfer window, and one rule before any number. These counts are distinct players whose move took effect from the 1st of June onwards. Contract extensions, youth promotions and loan returns are all excluded. On that basis, every one of the 18 clubs was checked, with nothing missing. The division has made 100 signings and 96 departures. Braunschweig and Karlsruhe lead the way with 10 each. Nürnberg made 9. Darmstadt and Wolfsburg made 8. Wolfsburg came down and went shopping inside the division. Fabian Rees from Hertha, 13 assists last season. Fraser Hornby from Darmstadt, 8 assists. Hauke Wahl from St. Pauli. Robert Glatzel from Hamburg. Their disclosed fees reached €21.7 million, which is more than every other club's disclosed fees added together. They sold 8 players as well. This is not a squad being rebuilt. It is a Bundesliga squad being pointed at one target. Hertha finished 7th with the joint best defence of any club staying in this division, 44 conceded. Then they sold. Kenneth Eichhorn to Bayer Leverkusen, Fabian Rees to Wolfsburg, Tjark Ernst to Feyenoord, Michael Cuisance to Lens. 7 players out, 1 player in, and he arrived on loan. Hertha have decided this season belongs to their academy. That decision is now very hard to reverse. Darmstadt finished 5th, scored 57 and drew 13 games, more than anyone else in the division. Then they sold the front line. Isaac Lidberg, 17 goals, went to Borussia Mönchengladbach. Fraser Hornby, 8 assists, went to Wolfsburg. Kilian Corridor went to Nantes. 8 in, 7 out. Noah Weishaupt arrived from Freiburg. Ibrahim El Kadiri from De Graafschap. Nicolas Verkooyen from PSV Eindhoven. Darmstadt cashed in the goals and bought youth and width instead. That is a top 5 side rebuilding its attack from scratch. Braunschweig scored 36 goals last season. That is the fewest of the 13 clubs that stayed in this division. They have signed 10 players and lost 3. Maximilian Entrup arrived from Lask, Junior Zay from Basel, Florian Flick from Nuremberg, Frederick Jäkel from RB Leipzig on a free transfer. 8 of the 10 are permanent deals. A club that finished 15th has run the busiest window in the division. It is aimed at the right problem. Karlsruhe conceded 64 goals, beaten only by Fürth, and still finished 10th. They have signed 10 and lost 6 under a new head coach. Shio Fukuda joined permanently from Borussia Mönchengladbach, Santeri Vananen from Rosenborg, Viktor Berg from Djurgården, Dennis Offley on loan from Bayern München. The squad they are assembling is young. Their best player is 33. Marvin Wanitzek scored 15 and made 76 key passes, and everything Karlsruhe do still runs through him. Fürth conceded 68 goals, the most in the division, and finished 16th. They also had the top scorer in the league. Noel Futko scored 20 and is now at Eintracht Frankfurt. 7 in, 8 out. Ole Pohlmann came from Rio Ave, Paul Will from Darmstadt, Janis Hoyer from Kaiserslautern, Maxim Dahl from Mainz. 2 centre-backs and a defensive midfielder, which is the right shape for a side that conceded 68. They have lost their goals and are trying to buy a defence. Nuremberg finished 8th and then sold both first-choice centre-backs. Luka Loshashvili went to 1, FC Köln, and he made 78 tackles, second most in the division. Fabio Gruber went to Mainz, 9 in, 8 out. Mikhail Fay arrived on loan from Rennes. Alexios Kalogeropoulos came from Olympiakos, Finn Otto from SC Verl, Giannis Masouras from Ammonia Nicosia. Only one of those 9 signings carried a disclosed fee. Nuremberg have rebuilt an entire backline on free transfers and loans. That is either clever or thin, and we find out quickly. Hanover were the best of the clubs that stayed. 4th place, 60 points, 60 goals. They signed 4 and lost 3. Their disclosed fees reach €3.6 million, the 3rd biggest in the division. Daisuke Yokota came from Ghent, Pascal Loretz from Luzerne, Taycan Echibasi from Borussia Dortmund. The loss is Enzo Leopold, who made 48 interceptions and left for Borussia Mönchengladbach on a free transfer. Hanover kept the attack that scored 60 and let the midfielder who protected it walk for nothing. Dynamo Dresden finished 11th, scored 54 and conceded 53. Then they spent 5 signings, 4 departures and €3.65 million in disclosed fees. Only Wolfsburg spent more. Ben Bobzian came from Mainz, Robert Wagner from Freiburg, Thomas Leon Keller from Heidenheim, Jonas Sterner from Hanover. A club that finished 11th is spending like one that expects to finish a lot higher. This is the most interesting mid-table window in Germany. 2 mid-table clubs have rebuilt in completely different currencies. Bochum finished 9th, signed 6 and lost 6. Not one of those 6 arrivals carried a disclosed fee. Karol Metz came from St. Pauli, Jean-Manuel Mbom from Viborg, Enis Chokai from Panathinaikos. Kiel finished 12th, scored 44 and signed 7 while losing 7. Georgi Kvilitaya arrived from Metz, Taisei Abe on loan from Japan, Hiroki Sekine on loan from Reims. Bochum rebuilt on free transfers. Kiel rebuilt on the international market. And the 2 promoted clubs, who matter most here. Energy Cottbus signed 5 and lost 3. 4 of those 5 were free transfers or loans. Leonardo Bittencourt came from Werder Bremen. Marcel Lotka and King Manu came from Fortuna Düsseldorf. Luca Erlein on loan from Bayer Leverkusen. Osnabrück signed 6 and lost 3, and only one of those 6 carried a disclosed fee. Both clubs went up in May, and these counts start in June. So both did more business than the numbers here can show. That limitation is worth stating rather than hiding. Now the other end of the window. 3 clubs have signed 2 players each, and 2 of those 3 came down from the Bundesliga. Heidenheim signed 2 and lost 5, and Frank Schmidt is still their head coach. St. Pauli signed 2 and lost 4, under a coach appointed in June. Bielefeld signed 2 as well, also under a new coach. Kaiserslautern signed 4, and 3 of those 4 are loans. Coming down with a thin squad is how clubs stay down. Every club in the division, in and out since the 1st of June. Braunschweig and Karlsruhe on 10, Nürnberg 9, Darmstadt and Wolfsburg 8, Kiel and Fürth 7, Bochum and Osnabrück 6, Dresden and Cottbus 5, Kaiserslautern, Magdeburg and Hannover 4, Heidenheim, Bielefeld and St. Pauli 2, Hertha 1. 2 things worth saying out loud. No club in this division sat the window out. And unlike many second tiers, there is no reserve side here without a transfer feed. All 18 are real clubs. All 18 were checked. All 18 moved. Fabian Rees, 28 years old. For Hertha, he led this division with 13 assists. That is the 96th percentile here. He took 96 shots and made 55 key passes. He scored 10 goals from 12.08 expected, so the finishing was the weak part. He is a volume player, and Wolfsburg have bought the volume. If he does this again, Wolfsburg go up. Barish Atik, 31, at Magdeburg. 100 key passes, more than anyone in the division, and 11 assists. That is the 96th percentile for creation in this league. He scored 6 himself. Magdeburg finished 14th and lost 19 games. So Atik created more than any player here for a team that could not defend. He is still there, and Magdeburg have signed 4 players. Marvin Wanitsek, 33, Karlsruhe, 15 goals and 76 key passes in 30 and 60 minutes. He is in the top 15% of this division for scoring and for creating. Almost nobody does both. A 33-year-old doing 2 jobs at a club that conceded 64. Karlsruhe have signed 10 players around him and changed the head coach. This season tells us whether that was enough. 5 clubs are new to this division. 3 came down from the Bundesliga: Wolfsburg, Heidenheim, and St. Pauli. 2 came up from the 3: Liga, Energie Cottbus and VfL Osnabrück. Going the other way, Schalke, Elversberg and Paderborn were promoted, and Fortuna Düsseldorf and Preußen Münster went down. One detail ties it together. Paderborn finished 3rd on 62 points, then beat Wolfsburg in the playoff to go up. That is the same Wolfsburg that is now the strongest squad in this league. So what does going up actually cost here? Schalke needed 70 points. Elversberg and Paderborn went up on 62. Of the clubs staying, Hannover came closest on 60, which is 2 short. Darmstadt and Kaiserslautern were on 52, so 10 short. Hertha were on 51. For most of this division, promotion was about 10 points away. Wolfsburg have spent €21.7 million to cover that gap. That is a projection, not a result. It starts on Friday the 7th of August. Bochum against Hertha opens it, and Hertha arrive having signed 1 player. On Saturday, Wolfsburg host Kaiserslautern, the first look at a €21.7 million rebuild. Heidenheim against Osnabrück puts a relegated club against a promoted one on day 1. Then on Sunday, Cottbus host Hannover and St. Pauli host Fürth. Firth conceded 68 last season. That match is the first test of whether they fixed it. What would change my mind? First, the window is still open, and Wolfsburg's squad is the one most likely to change again. Second, these counts begin on the 1st of June. A club that did its business in May looks quieter here than it was. Cottbus and Osnabrück are the two to watch for that. Third, 4 of these 18 clubs changed head coach this summer. Last season's numbers cannot tell you what a new coach will do with them. Every number here comes from tifolab.com. The percentiles, the squads, and this division's transfer window are free to read. If you think Wolfsburg walk this or that Braunschweig's 10 signings are the better story, say so. I would rather be argued with than agreed with.